Hello everyone, it is Matt here from Scoop in Response, and today we are going to be looking at another Dominaria United commander that's just released. Shanid, Sleeper's Scourge, is a 4-mana Mardu commander for 1 red, white, and black. He's a 2/4 Menace human knight with other legendary creatures you control have Menace, and whenever you play a legendary land or cast a legendary spell, you draw a card and lose 1 life. It's fantastic to see commanders like this where they enable some kind of reload and card draw from the command zone in an offensively slanted color set and commander body. I love commanders like this as it really removes the need for you to have dedicated card draw slots when you're building your deck, which lets you save room for more interaction and more threats. We're going to be casting plenty of legendary permanents and spells in this deck, with a total of 72 of the 99 being legendary, so lots and lots and lots of card draw. The deck breaks down as follows: 27 creatures and planeswalkers, 22 artifacts, 16 other spells, and 34 lands. Our creature base is very aggressive, with Rogra at 0 and 10 1-drops in addition, so you're going to be able to start fueling the engine immediately. These creatures are going to be drawing you a card if deployed after your commander, so they're never dead draws, but they're also going to be the first wave of attackers if you're going to be suiting up with a whole range of equipment. Hope of Girapur and Zabaz have flying, so you're not only getting Menace from Shanid, but an additional form of evasion there too. Ragavan and Zurgo are great as a recurable draw because they have dash, letting you return them to the hand at the end of each turn. Kytheon will have no problems flipping into Gideon with the density of small attackers. Yoshimaru, Mikaeus, and Rogak all make excellent sword holders due to their extra keywords or their propensity for getting larger over time. Rosnak mostly made the cut due to their mana value, but does have some incidental synergy with Battlecry. We've got 10 2-drops to follow up, with a few non-legendary inclusions sitting in here. Stoneforge Mystic, while not legendary, still draws you a card specifically in equipment, hence the include. Deep Gnome Terramancer is a newish card, which is too good to avoid despite its non-legendary status. Akiri, Lineslinger, and Daxos are just huge in this list, given our density of artifacts and devotion to white. General's Enforcer makes our legendary humans indestructible. Big hint, there's a decent amount. Elias, Aili, and Karlov form a pretty sweet life gain engine, which also serves as a removal package. Goro makes our squad always hasty, and Karizev makes us extra bodies to be aggressive with, and has synergy with the life gain engine. For our 3-drops, Runetail is going to flip immediately most of the time, giving us a slightly weaker form of indestructibility for our creatures. Tajik, Legion's End, is another protection piece for our board, but also an offensive threat that pumps our attackers up over time too. General Kudro is a lord for humans, a removal spell, and has graveyard hate stapled to him to boot. Astor is a beater with a tutor and a cost reducer all rolled into one. Sarah Paragon is going to let us buy back our smaller permanents, lands included, and our second Tajik, Blade of the Legion, is a solid attacker. Our final creature is Winoda, Joiner of Forces. We don't have any huge top end for humans, sticking with the lower curve and mid-range humans. Don't expect to hit every time, as we're only a total of 10, but we're just looking to get a little bit of extra value every now and again. So our mostly legendary creatures are going to be our win con, letting us extend onto the board without expending all of our fuel, and sometimes even being protected at the same time. Our artifacts package has 2 primary functions: ramp and equipment. Mana Crypt, Mox Amber, Mox Opal, Sol Ring, and Arcane Signet. These are just the suggested includes for this type of deck. I believe color fixing and colorless ramp that is efficient and repeatable are what I find to be the most useful for this type of strategy. Avoid things like Mana Vault and Grim Monolith. While they might be tempting, their inability to untap largely creates swingy but inconsistent situations when we're not playing in a tier 1 CEDH environment. We've got loads of choices for equipment, for both Asta and Stoneforge Mystic being our primary tutors. Eater of Virtue is an interesting card in this list, as we can get some of our keywords from our creatures onto the sword, but mostly it's for being a reasonable cantrip and cheap equip. Hammer is really only something we want late game, or if Asta is on the field giving us the reduction in equip cost, and Shadow Spear is great for the trample it grants and the lifelink. All 3 of these can actually be searched by Urza Saga as well if you need to, so don't forget that when you're searching. Blackblade Reforged and Conda's Banner make great pump spells for single targets or the team. Jit is super flexible, and Helm of Cauldron gives keyword soup to the wielder. Reaver Cleaver is an interesting source of treasure tokens. As a newer card, I haven't had much testing with this one yet, and Hammer of Nazan is protection and slight pump. Sword of Fire and Ice is a house of a sword, and the ability to send damage to a dork is always useful. And lastly, Embercleave and Cauldra form your top end finishes. Don't be scared to activate Stoneforge to bring it in that way instead. There are a few artifacts that don't fit into either the category of ramp or equipment. Expedition Map should be used with caution. It's much better to make sure that we have our colors fixed in many situations over an extra card drawn. A Triome or a Mana Confluence will give us better value over time than going 1 deeper and playing a Shinka that doesn't help us cast anything. Gerard's Pendant is board wipe protection. The Ozolith, for when we incidentally get a few 1/1 counters, we can save them and put them onto another creature. Whip of Erebos is mostly for the lifelink, but the reanimate additional functionality is very, very useful. And Akroma's Memorial is probably the best possible pump spell we can deploy for the team, and it easily justifies the 7 mana cost for this deck. For our enchantments, we've got a miniature shrine sub-theme, as well as a few choice backgrounds. All of these permanents are legendary, so their cost to include is so low and the upside so high for all of them. Agent of the Shadow Thieves lets us pump up our commander, Folk Hero lets us draw even more cards, and Guild Artisan lets us create additional treasures. The two shrines serve as cantrips that also tap down our opponent's creatures and drain our opponents each turn. We've got Legion's Landing, which is a flip land that lets us create additional token creatures. Black Market Connections is fast becoming one of the best black enchantments in the game, and Profane Procession being quite interesting in that it's removal that eventually becomes reanimation and a land. For instance, in sorceries, the big one is Urza's Ruinous Blast, which is almost completely one-sided as a board wipe. It's not going to deal with your opponent's commanders though, so make sure you keep all of the additional one-shot spells we have access to for those. Chandra Torture Defiance is a card that I just love. I felt it had to be included, although I couldn't blame you for actually wanting to build this commander as Mardu Super Friends. We didn't invest too heavy into other protection spells or anything like that are in instant and sorcery form. We wanted to maximize the number of permanents that we can be using to trigger our commander's card draw. Last up is our land base, which is in honesty a little bit taxed with the number of legendaries that we've included. It prevents us from playing fetch lands and dual lands, things like that. There's a lot of them that we just simply couldn't fit. We've balanced it reasonably well though, I feel. Being mindful of our mulligans will be very important for this. The channel lands are just spells that we can activate without casting, but they're also legendary, so really good in this deck. Nykthos is a great devotion ramp spell, and also feel free to chuck in Cabal Coffers. We didn't include it in this list as we don't have that many black pips in this particular version of the list, but I could definitely see some having much more black. Inventor's Fair is a really relevant card, letting us tutor for any of the equipment that we have or any other artifact that we might want. And we've got a number of legendary monocolored lands that grant our legendaries abilities like Fear, Haste, or Menace. Urza's Saga has a bucket load of useful and diverse targets, and Volrath's Stronghold is also a really relevant land that can help us recur our big threats if they've been dealt with and they've gone to the graveyard. That pretty much wraps up the video for today. Thanks so much for checking out the deck tech. I really enjoy putting together these kinds of videos. It's always fun to sort of staple a whole bunch of value together for a list like this and basically just play like a really consistent Voltron strategy. I think that's really where it's going to shine in the sort of mid to upper tier powers. I feel like the only previous commander that we really had that was like this is maybe Seguin, which I think is a 6-drop, and for me, while it was really cool, the Night Tribal in Mardu and everything like that, it just felt a little bit too top-end heavy. You're in a set of colors that doesn't really have good ramp, or at least it didn't historically, and so having a 6-drop commander and it gets removed once or twice and you're having to pay 10 mana for it, it just didn't really seem tenable to me. Something like this at the 4-drop slot makes it way more useful, and having card draw stapled to it just is excellent as well. We've got heaps more videos coming up in the future. I really hope you enjoyed the deck tech, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much, and bye for now.